One of the drawbacks about my work is that my mom doesn't know how to talk about it. She doesn't know how to brag about what her kid is up to. And that's because facilitation is not an easy thing to talk about. How do you explain what we do? You have to experience it to know it. You have to know what different facilitators are able to do and not do. And this is why I'm so excited to share this beautiful conversation between me and my friend Alia Lahlou, who is a magnificent, well respected, and well loved facilitator. She's also a mediator. She does organizational development work. And she just definitely has the gift for what we do and knows what it takes to do it, which is fundamentally to commit to working deeply on yourself. And she does that with courage and love and willingness. And that will all become evident to you as you listen to this conversation between us. I'm titling the episode Love and Facilitation. And part of that is because we spent the first 15, 20 minutes of the podcast talking about love. Alia's immigrant from Morocco, and she's queer, and those two things have not been easy to negotiate. And she has found her way to living in truth and stay a part of her family. And she has this beautiful, beautiful love with her partner, Alixa. And it's a love that I can relate to because I feel like I too have found this beautiful love. So there is a lot of love talk here. And I don't think it's separate from the facilitation talk, but I did want to let you know that we'll get to the facilitation talk, and I do hope you give time and heart to the love talk, and you'll see how it all threads together. You'll enjoy Alia's presence and the authenticity of her being, and I just can't wait to hear what you think and what you feel listening to this. Enjoy it. For those of you that don't know me, that might be listening for the first time, my name is Gibran Rivera, and I am a guide, a coach, and a facilitator. With this podcast, I'm inviting you into an unfolding, decentralized conversation with remarkable leaders who are doing their best work right at the edge of the evolution of consciousness and culture. Enjoy. Hola, Alia. Good to finally be sitting with you and recording this podcast that my heart's been called to do for a while.
Hola, amor. So happy to see you and hear you, and grateful for our calendars lining up in this perfect moment, finally.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for the conversation. I can't wait for my friends and listeners to know more about you. And we'll get into your work, your vocation, your story, how you got here. And immediately I like to ask people to begin with sharing something that they have changed their mind about. Some kind of belief that was core to your identity, that maybe you even professed in the world, that you either don't consider to be true any longer, or at least are holding more lightly.
I love going straight to the core of it. I don't know if that's meant to be a warm up question, but that goes straight to the heart,
Yes.
straight to the essence. I love that question. And, I'll be honest, when you sent it to me over email, my mind was trying to say all the things around all the multiple truths and the many things that I've learned in facilitation and in the world and in the many spaces that I've been in. And my heart and my body and my spirit knew exactly what the answer was, which
Mm,
is that I have held a very painful belief for a very long time that my family couldn't love me if they really knew me.
mm,
That if my queerness were to be out in a real way to the larger family, to the extended family, that I couldn't be a part of it. And I've held that belief either consciously or unconsciously, I would say, for my entire life up until last summer.
mm.
And so much has happened, so much beauty and pain and loss and miracle has happened to get me to a place where I no longer held that belief.
Wow. I'm feeling goosebumps literally all over my body. And I have gotten some hints of that as we chatted back and forth. And hmm, what a powerful thing. And first of all, like, what a heartbreaking thing to feel like an essential, fundamental part of you would not be welcomed by your kin. And are you okay with sharing a little bit about how that went about? Maybe people knowing something about your background would be important because
Mm,
we come from more traditional cultures, different ones, but more traditional ones where, yeah, like this is true in the US and Europe, but it's even more true in
mm-hmm,
other places and with other beliefs. So maybe you can
for sure.
yeah.
We're here. Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering about who's listening. And maybe when I say that, folks who grew up Catholic say, oh, yes, that's my story. Or folks who grew up Mormon or deeply Jewish or deeply Muslim or deeply insert whatever identity might contribute to feeling like, oh, my queerness will not be able to coexist joyfully, easily with the rest of me and the rest of my identity. I have been brought up. I'm from Morocco. I was raised in Morocco. I lived there my whole life until 17 when I came to the US for college. And, other than I got a scholarship to a good school, really, I was coming to be queer. I was, I was coming to be queer and to be free. And I was, and I did, and I found that. And I think part of what was difficult, even in those years of like outrageous freedom in a way, that I insisted on practicing, and that was so liberating and so healing. Part of the pain of that was almost a bifurcation of my life. Is okay, this is where I can be a sister and a daughter and a cousin and a niece to my family. And I have to show up in particular ways with certain identities and certain parts of myself. And then here is where I can be the student who is from another country and who is here, exploring and being free with the rest of us who are similarly trying to do that in that particular age group. So yeah, it's a story as old as time. I think I can't go back myself, but that's what I'm told about homophobia and its many ugly faces throughout time and place. And it's a story that I think was reinforced by a lot of things, not just religion, though I don't come from a particularly religious family, but certainly legally, where it's illegal to be gay in Morocco. It's like punishable by a prison sentence, and really mostly culturally, and mostly in the unspoken of like, ooh, such and such man is effeminate, but we're not really going to talk about it. We're going to say just enough to all know what we're saying without actually saying it.
Right.
Right. So there
Right.
was a lot of like reading between the lines and feeling into the energy of what is okay and what isn't. And, um, what people think is, I think the root of caring about what people think is very beautiful.
Hmm.
And the shadow side of it, the shadow side of so much interconnectedness, and the difficult side of so much being in community is, well, if the others will think that this is wrong or will be uncomfortable, then I will not do it for the
Right.
larger collective good. And that's very much the culture that I grew up with. And in a way, I actually really love that culture. I want to be interconnectedness. I want to care about what my aunt thinks and cares.
Mm, yeah.
I landed in the U.S. where it was taken to the other extreme, where it was like freedom at all costs.
Right.
Um, and I don't jive with that, and this is
Mhm.
me and like take it or leave it. And I don't know if that also feels too harsh and too extreme.
That's great.
And, many times people say, well, why don't you just cut contact? And I'm like, that's just the most horrible idea I've ever heard.
Right.
So I think my life has been a finding of maybe not balance, but more a finding of my own way,
Mhm.
and of even changing the paradigm to actually find that there is much more freedom in that interconnectedness of home that I don't think I was as aware of beforehand.
That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful and miraculous too. I think we can all imagine a situation where it would not have gone well,
Mm.
right?
And it didn't
Neighbor.
for a long time.
Uh-huh.
And it didn't for a
Mhm.
long time. And the long and
Right.
short of it is, after many years of pain and disconnection and rejection of my queerness and my relationship specifically, which adds on dimensions of xenophobia and racism and elitism and all sorts of other, forces of separation. After many years of pain and disconnection from my family, there truly have been miracles. Like, I don't understand on this plane what happened. The A plus B did not equal C in this situation. And so I know there are forces at play. I know there are ancestors at play. I know that the multiple deaths and losses in my family over the last couple of years have deeply contributed to a heart opening, to a spirit opening, to a recommitment to love and familial bonds, and to being with each other in the truth of who we are in a way that I could have truly never even dreamed of. Like, I don't
Mhm.
think I was free enough or bold enough to even imagine where we are now. Literally just a year ago, I bow to the mystery of this miracle that has happened.
Oh, Namah Shivaya. That is so beautiful.
Mm.
That is so, so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you
Thank
for sharing that.
you.
And it's so, again, the goosebumps all over. I Right now I am recording from Columbus, Ohio, while I Tuesday and I, my love, we have a house in Boston, but I have a child in Boston and she's got a child in Columbus, and we're committed to our parenting, and so
Mm.
we're looking at the possibility of 4 more years of living apart,
Oof.
but and if that's our lot, that's our lot. We also have been given something that few people get,
Mm.
which is just the truest of true loves and a miracle of togetherness that I know I yeah, I almost stopped looking for.
Mm.
And
Let me say before you move on, I love the energy that you have carried since falling in love with Tuesday.
thank
Your
you, thank you.
smile is like stretching your face as far as it can, and your eyes are so bright, and you've been leading with that love. And I just see all the ways that it's fed you and nourished you and like heightened you to a
Yes,
higher
thank
version of
you.
yourself. I'm so happy to witness your love.
Thank you so much for seeing it. Thank
Hmm.
you for seeing it. It's really is a miracle, and there's just not a day when I'm not in love.
Hmm.
Not a single day has happened. But I
Hmm.
bring it up because at one point we were thinking about that reality. Like it would have been 5 years and a year back, and she said, "You know what? Though 5 years ago, I couldn't imagine this."
Hmm.
You know, so this miracle, these unfoldings, they don't stop, right? And like the future is not imaginable. Like it should be imagined, right? To give us some orientation. But who knows
Hmm.
what miracles are before us, what more growth, what more unexpected wonder. Um,
And how humbling, no? And what a relief to not know.
yes, yes,
You
right,
know?
right.
in 5 years, I want this, or,
Yeah.
here's the
Yeah.
10-year plan. And I'm like, okay, I mean, let's see what all the forces have in store for you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's good not to know and it's scary not to know. And I'm glad I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
What I
Yeah.
could have imagined or planned or wished for is so much smaller and less beautiful than what has happened. So I surrender. I surrender in a way I have never surrendered before.
Ashe. Ashe. And I think that's part of what makes it possible. Or at least the essential part is surrender. It's
Mm,
just turning towards and knowing less and just opening your heart, you know.
let's see.
But thank you for saying what you said about my relationship because it came as I knew I wanted to ask you
Hmm.
to tell us a little bit more about your relationship, which I know it's another miracle. And let me confirm: was I around when? With did I? What did you all meet at Burning Man? Did you meet in that camp, or was that did you know each other before?
We met a few months before that, but what I love about you saying that is there's another dear friend who's convinced we met at her house, and it keeps saying that is not where we met, and that is the story she's holding. So multiple truths, but no, we met. So yeah, you're talking about 2018 Burning Man. Yeah, we met a few months before that, and miracle is surely the right word, and magic is the other one that comes.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure what about my relationship you're asking, but it's all I want to talk about most days. So if you want to orient me in a particular
Let,
direction, or
tell
I
me,
could just
tell
riff.
me, tell me a couple of words about her, and tell me a couple of words about what happens between you
Hmm.
that feels so real and is perceptible to the eye.
Let's start with her name. Her name's Alixa. She is the most magical person I know, just by virtue of being and by virtue of all she does, which is that I'll open the fridge and think we have nothing to make a meal out of, and she'll make a delicious, amazing 10-course meal. And I'm like, I don't even know where you pulled those things from. And we'll enter a hotel room that has terrible lighting, and somehow within 10 minutes it looks magical. And we'll be
Wow.
in a difficult situation, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, whatever it is. And she'll say and do just the right thing and hold just the right space and touch just in the right way to bring in so much magic and so much love and so much beauty, her attention to beauty, by virtue of who she is, by virtue of being an artist, a multidisciplinary artist that has a hand in painting and one in poetry and one in writing and one in teaching and one in creation of magical spaces. It's just by virtue of who she is, life is better. And in ways that, like, I think if someone had shared my love story as if it were theirs, I wouldn't believe them. I mean, some of the stories we have are maybe beyond the realm of our conversation today. and and I mean that in the sense of, like, there have been some, I don't even want to call them supernatural because they're natural, they happened, but some like otherworldly experiences that we've had that have made me, I think, believe in life outside of this visible dimension in ways that I hadn't before, in ways that even religion did not make me before. And I think I feel what our relationship has done to me and to both of us is made us work hard to see ourselves and made us want to be the best versions of ourselves. And it doesn't even feel like effort.
Hmm.
It doesn't even feel like effort.
Right.
And the work of being the best version of ourselves and doing the best that we can for each other is like the deepest joy and privilege and honor of my life, truly.
That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful, and I believe it completely because A, I see it, and B, I know it to be true in my own life, you know. And the truth is, not everybody gets this, you know, and
Mm.
it's not the conditioning sometimes is too much in place for, and the willingness,
Mm.
you know, or just the grace sometimes doesn't. You're called to different things, but
Mm.
it's really special. It's really special to witness and to know it to be true.
Mm.
Hmm.
You know what Alixa shared with my mom when they met, and it was beautiful. And after many years of not meeting and very many not beautiful energies, is when they met and Alixa was sharing around our love. She said, you know, I feel like there are multiple kinds of loves. There's like a mental love that makes sense because you are of a particular milieu and I am, and we're going to make sense in a particular way. And I love you for that. And we're going to build this thing. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that it's coming from a particular orientation and focus. And then there's romantic love, which is like my heart loves yours. And we have this romance. And from there, we're building our relationship. And she said to my mom, and I think this is what made my mom melt. She said, Alia and I have a soul love. Like our souls recognized each other and said, oh, I found you again. Let's do it.
Hmm.
Let's do it right. and and we love each other into shape.
Ashe. Ashe. I get it. I
Yeah.
feel it. And my body's saying yes. You got me. We're just getting started here. You got
Mm.
me with multiple rushes of goosebumps.
Your
This is
questions,
great.
ask and you shall receive. No small talk on this podcast.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank
Mm,
you. And
yeah.
uh and thank her and thank you for your courage and
Mm,
willingness to stay in it.
thank you.
The world needs it for sure.
Mm,
Um I'm gonna
mm.
I'm gonna turn perhaps abruptly
Yalla.
to um work, if we call it work, is vocation for some of us, and I think for you it is. And you and I first met because a mutual friend,
Mhm.
uh, Jason Drucker, he said to me, I know a young person that I think will be a facilitator like you're a facilitator. And I was like, well, great. Let me meet her. and, and we made space and met in New York City and just kind of stayed
Mhm.
aware of each other since. And I have definitely heard about your work as it develops over time from
Mhm.
other people that have been in your spaces. I recently heard about, I think it might have been a space that you weren't even supposed to facilitate, where you just had to step up and solve a situation. And I heard that was a hard space and that you saved the day in some ways.
Many
And
hands.
so knowing that we know something about this special calling, I want to know where you are in your journey and even how you got to this.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, maybe I'll start with a gratitude for having met me for coffee so many years ago. And I definitely feel like the context of that meeting was here I am, a baby facilitator, or wanting to be a facilitator, or whatever, label we want to put on it. And you, I think, deeply beloved and deeply appreciated in so many movement spaces and organizations. And I was so moved that you made space. I think you had like 45 minutes between meetings in some like random location in Upper Manhattan, and we like had a coffee standing in a corner somewhere. So I was very moved by that. I want to thank you.
Well, it was very moving for me too.
Thank
Your
you.
energy was vibrant.
And
Always is.
thanks for modeling, because sometimes I'll get emails. I'm like, oh, I don't want to meet new people. And then I'm like, oh my God, no, I do. because I do, because look what develops, not just in terms of friendship, but also, I'm here because of you and because of many. And so, yeah, loving it forward. Um, my work, I mean, I have the assumption that many people in your world already know what facilitation is and are perhaps connected themselves. How did I end up here? Honestly, I think I ended up here because I I grew up needing, though unconsciously, needing a lot more communication than we had.
Hmm.
At school, in my home, in my friendships, in my family, in my context, the the subtlety was a little too much for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the sort of unconscious, the let it be, the we don't talk about this, we don't talk about that, or that was fixed, but we don't know how, let's keep moving. What I think I needed, I craved like clarity and connection and communication in a way that was a lot more explicit. And this is a really a recent learning for me. Like I have all sorts of other stories for how I ended up in facilitation. You know, I was
Mm-hmm.
interested in global peace and conflict transformation and anti-war, and that was one entry point in terms of like dialogue circles and things like that. And another entry point was some personal development work that I got into that happens in a group context. And so circle work and sort of personal healing that's possible and amplified when we're in group setting. And another one is organizational development. And I love to work with organizations that are doing good work in the world. And so that's my entry point. And I think if I really come down to the core of it, the like initial pull was I want to understand what's happening, and I want to be able
Mm-hmm.
to talk about it in a way that allows all of us to actually show up for the conversation. And so, what are the elements that make a conversation possible, a difficult conversation possible? How can we build and co create an environment that will allow us to breathe through what's hard and to look at what's unknown and what's difficult and say, okay, here's a tool, here's a skill, here's an awareness, here's a possibility, here's a touch, a move, a shift that can make this big situation a little bit less scary or more possible. And I think I really needed that. It's so interesting to learn that in my mid 30s. Like I've been facilitating as my job really since as my career since I started, and to realize like that's what it's rooted in. Feels a little funny to say, but I think that's my most honest answer. And then there's everything else.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. It all makes sense. It all makes sense. It makes perfect sense to me. And good on you to just follow that, right? To just follow it and to know yourself in it, you know. One of the things I want to be careful with what I'm saying because I don't want to
Mm,
discourage anybody, but kind of a positive turn that I've noticed in my career is that more and more people name themselves facilitators. You know,
mm,
they which to me says they get that there's something essential about it. In in many cases, there's not yet a full understanding of the inner work that is necessary
oof,
before taking on that label.
mm,
And maybe you can only learn it along the way, so you start to facilitate meetings and realize that something else is needed from you, that you're not just going to be,
mhm,
but there is this deep work that's necessary. And yeah, it's clearly really obvious to me that you are the facilitator that you are with the reputation that you have because
mm,
of the work that you do on yourself and the courage that you have to turn towards life on its terms, you know. And
mm,
it's I think that's at the heart of it. I
mm,
wonder, and it's okay if there's no easy slogans or
mm,
aphorisms, but I know I keep a couple of phrases or a couple of key notes in my head for
mm,
what it takes for me to show up and hold space. And I wonder if you have yours. I can maybe give you a couple of examples, but
mm.
giving you time to think.
I'd love to hear.
One of them, a central one that I learned early, is the success of an intervention is directly proportional to the interior condition of the intervener. And so
Mm-hmm.
just kind of getting that and knowing that allowed me to to just keep working on myself, you know, and knowing that that was essential to what I was trying to bring to the world, like making no separation between that one and the other.
Yes.
And then other things like it can't just be open, which I think is the bias of most facilitators to like at some point a conversation's done and a hard decision's gonna be made,
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna move. And I think that, so if I think about the openness as horizontal energy, I think a differentiator in me versus other great facilitators I know is that I'm willing to bring the vertical,
Mm-hmm.
and and a very high awareness that my first job is to ground myself in the room and to try to be the biggest heart in the room,
Mm-hmm.
not as a competition but as a holding quality. That pendulums move, in accordance to, like, the biggest pendulum. In this case, I mean the heart. And so those are some of the things that I keep in mind, and I wonder what yours might be.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I mean, those resonate so beautifully and so fully, and definitely do not feel like slogans. Um, I mean, I'll start with love. So ultimately, it all comes back to love. We're either moving from love or from fear.
Hmm.
I really feel that. It doesn't mean that there's no love in fear or vice versa. It just means that what is my orientation and what pull will I allow to pull. And so I really have to be really grounded in my own love before entering any facilitation, whether it's mediation, a large group, a conference, online, in person, whatever it is. And not love like, oh, I'm so positive, I'm here smiling.
Right.
Not like everything is so fantastic. Hi, everybody. Let me put on my facilitator hat. Not that. Not the performance of love, but the love that also loves grief, and
Hmm.
the love that also loves anger, and the love that knows that there's a reason we're disconnected, and there's a reason that toxic dynamics exist, and there are reasons that we have not yet sorted out what we want to sort out, or that we don't yet know each other or the answer to this question or whatever it might be. So I think maybe, the love that says everything is welcome here,
Hmm.
and we're going to look at it. Come on in, judgment, have a seat. Come on
Hmm.
in, fear, have a seat. You know, come on in, right or wrong thinking. Let's play. Um, Love as joy. I mean, I used to work full time as a facilitator in a consulting company, which was really beautiful and really hard. And the day that I quit was the day that I woke up and realized that I wasn't feeling joyful because I was so tired. And I was like, no, I'm not showing up with a checklist of things that I have to do to facilitate this gig, quote
Right.
unquote. So the joy for me is non-negotiable. And I find joy in my work, even when I'm angry and tired and having my own shit going on personally, and the world feels like it's inflamed and my body is inflamed. And
Hmm.
the joy of possibility, the joy of connection, even when I'd rather stay in bed, but the joy of like, hi, it's good to meet you.
Hmm.
You know, let's do this. So that joy is important to me, and the invitation of joy. Um, and I think just good practices, like there's no skimping on the welcome music. There's no skimping on the break, on the somatic practice, on the movement, on the breath, on space, on like a good seating arrangement, on just
Right.
everything that makes it a little bit more possible to be brave, and a
Ashe.
little bit more possible to trust, and a little bit easier to take off a mask and to put down a story and to like step into something that's deeply uncomfortable. So I really, yeah, like folks I work with will laugh. I'll be like, my list of supplies includes, squishy balls, but like I really need those squishy balls
Right. Right.
or something, that,
Right.
that does the impact of the squishy ball. And maybe the last one I'll pick up on is the thread that you shared, which is, so much attention to what's the right amount of structure and form that will allow us the freedom and the space and the creativity to play. Because when it's too open, I don't actually want to play. I think most of, there's a reason a soccer field has, what are they called? Borders.
Yes,
Or,
that's right.
or a
That's right.
basketball, whatever, like a playground. Like in
Yes.
a way, the world is a playground, but the playground is actually a playground because there's a sand pit and there's a slide, and we know that this is the space within which
Yes.
we can play, and so we can feel safe because we know that there's an intentionality in what's been created, and it's not so small that I can only play in a particular way. So definitely enough form and structure, And then within that, yalla, let's go.
Nice. Beautiful.
So I would say,
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. Love it.
yeah.
Love it. It's a delight. It's a delight to speak with people that know this and get
Mm,
it. And it's just so good.
mm,
I'd love to know about, I'll share a little bit about some of the edges that I'm coming up against in a positive way in my
mm,
own work, and curious as to what yours are, you
mm,
know? So mine are the ones I want to highlight are two different ones. One is kind of new, kind of quite recent. Just facilitated something. I facilitated this something a couple of years in a row and wonder whether I should go sometimes because I feel more like a glorified MC
mm,
than a facilitator. And and I do this like 4 or 5 day things where I'm on the whole time and I'm operating in all cylinders, and there's something about me that thrives in that because
mm,
you gotta have your full game on, and
mm,
you got nothing else to pay attention to but what's happening, right? Like the
mm,
conditions
mm,
are such. And the evolutionary leadership workshop is this thing that I convene that is the best example of that kind of intensity.
mm,
But in this one, after doing it for a couple of days, you just kept getting this feedback. There's this gratitude, and people saying
mhm,
you are holding this together, and it's not that I need that feedback, but it was surprising to me because my effort was minimal,
mm,
right? And so if I'm coming from a mindset of I'm doing this thing, then you could feel like I'm not doing much. And yet for the participants, it felt like quite a lot.
mhm,
And so one of the things one of the edges I'm working on is like, what if more of this is easy?
mhm.
That I've allowed that's doesn't why does part of me make that a problem? Right? Why does part of me feel like if I'm not sweating it out, then it's not work that's making a difference?
Where does
And
that come from for you?
what's that?
Where does that come from for you? If I'm not,
Yeah, exactly. No, it must be, yeah, definitely an upbringing, right? Definitely a cultural ethos of we work, like our family, we work. That's what we do. We work hard, each one of us, and maybe there's some idea of value that comes from that. Or thank you for the gift of your attention. If there's something here that resonates for you, something that feels true and good, think about a friend that you could share it with. We curate for each other, and that's the only way the good stuff spreads. Let's stay with it. You seem to have a line of inquiry for me.
I
I'll
have,
turn myself
yeah.
over here.
I'm wondering, I'm wondering if you're sharing of your edges. I like see you putting it out almost to look at it, and I'm asking you for permission to tell you what I'm seeing.
Yes, yes, please.
You started with one of the truths for you in facilitation is the success of the intervention is directly correlated to the intervener
Hmm.
and to their own interior condition. So, maybe you're not working hard those couple days, or you don't feel like you're working hard because you're not sweating, but you've worked hard for a lifetime to get to that place.
Hmm.
How much work have you done to be able to show up in that way? So it's not a lazy, I didn't work much. It's I've worked so much that I am now truthfully embodying what is needed and what's conserved.
It's beautiful.
That's what I see. And I feel you. I feel you on that. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I should be working harder. But
Right.
the truth is I've worked so hard
That's
and I've
right.
worked so hard. And,
That's right.
if some facilitations are relatively easy, maybe that's okay because I need fuel for the hard ones, and the hard ones are coming.
Right, right,
So it
right.
sounds like your presence in this particular gathering, your presence, your being,
Hmm.
your, what did you call it, glorified emceeing is itself medicine. Ah, that's
Hmm.
okay. That's so beautiful.
Mm. That's a beautiful. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for taking a moment to help me see. And it makes sense. It makes sense. It does make sense because I know that I do my very best to turn towards what's real inside of myself.
Oof. All day. It's not just your 9 to 5. That's your
Yeah,
life.
yeah, yeah.
I see it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. Um, well, I'll tell you the other
Mm.
one and then
Mm.
hear yours.
This is fun. I love this.
The other,
I love this nerding out we're doing. Bring it.
the other one is I am a participant. I feel like the most edge spiritual practice that I'm doing is this work on emergent interbeing. And the practice then is emergent consciousness dialogue. And the idea is that there's a shared consciousness among us. And that if we bring our attention to it, we can speak from it, you know? And it starts to speak. And when you're not speaking from it, anyone not speaking from it, the space can feel it, right? So it's also this place where you constantly fall into the trap of not speaking from it, intellectualizing it or being excited by it, but not. And so like you go speak and then it falls flat, and then you gotta like come back to yourself and humbly come back in, and it's like you're living at a real edge. And in it, I'm literally setting aside so much of what I've learned about facilitation, right? Because
Mm.
not guiding the space anywhere, right? I'm
Mm.
being guided by it, and it's not to say that guided space is not necessary. I believe fully in that,
Mhm.
but it's good to have this other side, where I'm letting go of my knowing or my mastery for sake of making room for my unknowing. So that's the other way in which I'm finding a beautiful edge, and I'm really called to that ongoing practice, and wondering what it will do to
Mm.
my other practice. How will they come closer to each other?
Mm.
But those are my edges right now that I can more easily name, and I
Mm.
wonder where you find yourself.
Can I ask a question about the second edge that
Yes,
you just named?
please,
Because I
please,
want to
please.
make sure I'm getting it and I feel something percolating. I don't know what it is. Are you saying that one of the edges you're experiencing right now is like to let the thing that's happening naturally and organically be without necessarily knowing what it is or even naming it so well,
Yes, yes, it's a
clearly?
version of that. The one slight distinction I make, which is the context is specific. It's not like I'm being called into a. I think when I'm being in a room, I'm also listening for what wants to happen, but there's more of bringing my skill set, right? And
Mm.
here, everyone in the room is coming with this shared intention,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily like they don't have to master it, but they are curious about what happens if we open up to our shared intelligence,
Yeah.
to the shared collective interbeing, literally, like this way in which we are more than individuals and we speak from there. So
Mm.
yes to what you said, but the
Mm.
context specific for it. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Beautiful. I meant to text you this last week and I forgot to, so I'll tell you now. I'll share with you now. We have a friend in common, Iraq,
Oh
Boston
yeah,
based, beautiful.
yeah.
Hi, Iraq, if you're hearing this. We were
Nice.
at a retreat together a couple weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
and in one of the moments around like, what do we need in the space, and what are our practices and all this, I shared how important it is for me for people to speak from the I, or to be very clear about who the we is, or the you, or the they. Like, that's just one of the things I need. It's like non-negotiable for me. When people say you, and I'm like, you, me, you, the universal you as in you, but it's too vulnerable to say I. Like, I start asking these questions, and so I love the clarity of pronouns. And Iraq came in with the we, the space between us. He was like,
Uh-huh.
we as the space between us. And then we were chatting at lunch, and in Boston, I was like, oh yeah, so-and-so, of course, 10 connections in common. Your name came up. We both screamed with joy. And he was like, I get that from Gibran. He was like, the we is the space between us. So when I speak from the we, it's beyond the I, or there's like the thing between us here that I'm trying to put name to and language to. So I wanted to share that
Ashe.
with you. I also have a photo that I'll text you. But you come up with love.
Ashe.
Yeah.
Ashe. It's funny, I was texting with him just today. Yeah, me and him were texting. So yeah, that's beautiful. That moves my heart.
Mm. So what's the question? The edges, my edges. You're
Yeah,
asking a question about my
what are
edges.
you leaning into? What are you kind of learning or wanting
Yeah.
to learn as you keep growing in this craft?
Mm. I'm really learning discernment,
Uh-huh.
because so much is possible in any given moment, right? And I'm really learning, like, how much can we invite just right now? How much
Mm-hmm.
is enough for now?
Mm-hmm.
When I can see this invitation into this, like, bigger thing, deeper thing, further thing, and I can, like, see almost this trajectory that we can go to. And I feel like what I'm learning is, like, what does this group need, and what can this group handle just now? And one of the ways it shows up is, and I think especially since 2020, a lot of organizations will come forward and be like, oh, can you do DEI work with us?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the ask. And then, it takes two conversations. It takes 5 minutes of a conversation to understand that beneath DEI, which is this like word, this off the shelf that everyone is able to pick up, because now there's language where there's so much more happening that
Yeah.
is related to the
Yeah.
questions that DEI is asking, and that is related to belonging, and that is related to many other things. And so part of the things I'm learning is, when to bring in the other things that I know could serve, that maybe we haven't already agreed on, or maybe they're
Mm-hmm.
not expecting, or maybe are like so far beyond the scope of what this group knows and does together. And yet I think, or I know, or I feel, or I intuit that it will serve the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And, sometimes it comes in ways that I'm not even fully aware of. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, something happened in that moment, beautiful, or I like pulled from a different skill set or a different part of my toolbox. And sometimes I'm sort of like sitting there, like, holding my lips together and kind of sitting on my hands a little bit, like holding myself back from doing something, because I'm like, are they going to judge it? Are they going to be open to it? Is it okay? Do we have time for it? Can this really happen in a conference room? Yeah, maybe discernment
That's
and
great.
bravery. I think bravery is related to that, and integrity,
That's
because I also
yeah.
don't want to bring in something that we're not prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the preparation is unconscious, and sometimes it has to be conscious. So
Yeah.
I think part of that comes, and I know you can relate to this, is facilitating very different contexts,
Yeah.
right? So,
Right.
sometimes I'm holding a mic at a conference, and that's one kind of facilitation. And sometimes we're in nature, and, you know, we're in a circle and it's dark and things are
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and sometimes we're in altered states, that are
Yes.
opening up other possibilities. And sometimes, yeah, I keep going. So
Yeah.
just because I can facilitate all those contexts doesn't mean all those things are applicable or relevant or appropriate everywhere. And I see the parts of me that are like yearning to maybe build a little bit more bridges between some of these worlds.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah, no, the resonance is very, very real. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for
Like
doing the work.
what's coming to me, because outside, I know and I love your work, is like, how much like sacred masculine conversation can we have in this boardroom? you know like am I about to like bring the thing that really cracks this open, or am I about to lose the room? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yes, Ashe.
so that's an
Ashe.
edge. That's an
Yes, that's a good one. That's a good edge. I got goosebumps again.
edge.
This is good. This is working.
Mm,
Thank you.
thank
I
you.
know I have like three lines of inquiry. Hopefully we can cover them.
Mm,
The first I think I want to go to is the we can start with DEI, but there's more. How do I say it? I think you are. I know you're younger than me, and so the younger folk I feel are better skilled at working with kind of the ethos of this moment in social movement spaces, and uh, it has a lot of it's it has a lot of good things, and it has a lot of shadow, and
mm, mm,
there is something about it that actively walking away from because
mhm,
it's not who I am or who I want to be in the world. Um, we can narrow it to cancel culture. We can narrow it to communities that are held together by fear of exile.
mhm,
You know, we can call it fundamentalisms, ideological fundamentalisms, but
mhm.
I don't believe in them, and I'm walking away. You know, and it's more and more successfully.
Yeah.
Um, so oftentimes you're being called to DEI, but really you're being called to hold a certain line of thinking
Mhm,
um, that I can't hold because I don't believe
mm,
in it. And so I'm just wondering how you, because I just know that you have a sense of nuance and a deep sense of care and compassion
mm,
that will make it impossible for you to fully imbibe this vibration.
mm,
How do you deal with it? What are you
mm,
doing in relationship to
mm,
that vibration, that energy that centers victimhood and resentment and
mm.
threat style?
Thank you so much for the question. I think it's really important, and I wish more people were asking that question in this space. I'll start by saying that there's like, I don't know if you feel a nervousness in asking the question, but I certainly feel a nervousness in answering it, because I think there's a complexity, and there's an intention, and there's a political orientation, and there's a sense of justice, and there is a belief in things that are so much larger than what we even have access to here, that I think are playing in this intersection point that sometimes like a quick answer cannot do justice to.
That's fair.
And so I'm afraid of being frozen in a particular
Yeah.
sentiment or comment. And I don't want you to be frozen in that. And I don't want to
Right.
project onto you. So maybe you don't care, but
Yeah.
I'm here like, oh, I don't want you also as the asker of the question to be frozen in like, oh, it's about victimhood. Like
Right.
that line can be taken so out of context for someone who doesn't know
Yes.
you
Yes.
and the depth of what you do and the political liberatory consciousness with which you do your work that
Right.
can make that statement
Right.
cancel worthy. So I
Yeah.
feel like
Thank you. Thank you for the
there
care.
there's some tenderness here. There's some carefulness. Here's what I'll say. I think we, the collective we of this country, of this world, is living, and I know it's been the case for many years. I'm not romanticizing the past, and I think we're living in this current version of deep pain, of deep separation, of deep injustice, of deep oppression, of deep impacts of the environment and politics and economy on some of us more than on others, and of a lot of fear and trauma coming up.
Hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of good intention for getting us out of here. And I think some people's route is, let's talk about our identities like that's all that exists. And I so honor that because I see where it comes from. Like, this particular side of myself has not been seen or honored or respected. And so I'm going to lead with it, and I'm going to center gender and race and or class and or et cetera, right? Sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, etc. And I really see that intention and I honor it. I think my fear and my own experience of some of those spaces that have gone wrong and those conversations is that that can be the end of it. Mm-hmm. And we cannot weaponize our identities. And there certainly is not a handy little calculator in which you put in all your identities and then you get an ordered list of the room and who's at the top and who's at the bottom. And so we will speak, in opposite order. And I think that's the shadow side, right? Like, yes, identity, yes, power, yes, systems, yes, all of that. Plus, yes to what is your relationship with your family, and what is your relationship to your body, and what is your relationship to spirit, and what is your relationship to authority, and what is your relationship to time. And some of it is white supremacy culture. Some of it really isn't. Or it's not just that. So I don't want to tell a simple story. And, I don't want to be part of a simple story. The simple stories haven't worked out for me. The simple story of here's who we are and here's who we are not does not work for me. It hasn't worked. I'm a walking contradiction in many ways if I believe in those belief systems that separate us along those ways. So I know too much in my own body that many things are possible at once and many dynamics are playing out at once. So I don't want to be part of a simple story. And, I want to do DEI work if we're also aware that what we're talking about ultimately is belonging. We're talking about is love. What we're talking about is the creation of something that works for all of us. And I certainly don't want to be moving from shame and blame because I don't think anyone grows from that. And I don't think your white be quiet is really going to get us to many places.
That's right.
And I think it's also really dangerous to say, I have such and such identities, and so I am the truth, And in a way, I care about what people's truths are. In a way, I care more about what they do with their truths.
Gotcha.
So, what's your truth guiding you towards? And who's inside the tent and who's not? And that's what I care about. And I think that's what I want to be careful with this work. That's that's become very popular. Yeah. And, I believe also in baby steps, and I believe in progression. And I believe that one thing will lead to the next. And hopefully this is a step towards, some of the deeper things that we both care about.
That's beautiful. That is such a wise and well-measured response. And there's a lot there for me to hold and see. So you taught me something too in your sharing.
Nice. Thank you.
The one I can't skip is Burning Man. we go. I'm not gonna go this year, and we're both talking about it. Yeah.
Don't break my heart live.
I know. Do we have this? We have this getting married thing happening, and so.
Oh my god! I almost choked on my water. Oh my god! Yes.
So, you have to make some tough choices about what our time is going to be.
Felicidades.
Gracias. It's a miracle. I'm so excited. And my camp is also taking a break, but I could go with another camp, and I would. It doesn't. Yeah, it's a heartbreak, and you just accept it.
Yeah.
I wanted you to tell me a little bit more about it. You've been before me. I've seen you there every time I've gone, and two lovely points of reference. One was you and Alixa not meeting there, but just falling deeply into your love there, and you telling me to go to the deep playa, and you at a dance party, and actually good dance party, because in the first couple of years we were going, it's like, what is happening? There's so much music and so little of it is good. So props on Burning Man trying to get some people of color there, like shit. But
Get a
um,
drum beat in between all this electronic music.
well, we were finally getting it in. But it was a tough burn for people. For
Mm,
many people, it was a tough burn. From weather wise to whatever was happening in people from like the gap. Like it was
mm,
an intense tough burn is not always a bad burn. It's
mm,
just like you got to do some burning. That's part of
mm-hmm.
being in this ritual and ceremony. But for you, you were having the burn of a lifetime. So I'm like, here's somebody that's like having a different experience than a lot of people I'm talking to. So anyway, tell me about Burning Man. Tell
Ah,
me about what it means to you. Tell me about why it's important. Yeah.
it's everything. What do I not
Mhm.
love about it? Yes, it's hard and the dust and the heat and so many things. And I want to, I feel like a lot of like social justice, whatever movement, liberation, whatever you want to call yourselves, folks also go to Burning Man. I feel like there's always this caveat of like, and I know there's a carbon footprint, and I know, yes, there are not as many people of color as we want, and we're working on it and this and that. And so with all of that said, with so much attention to all of that, that Burning Man is for me, it's really a place where I practice being free.
I see.
And it's really I think that the more I grow up, the more I realize that it's actually hard to be free.
Yes.
Like, my whole life has been like love and freedom, love and freedom. And if you make me choose, I'll choose freedom. I'll choose freedom over anything. Then I'm like, but what does it actually mean day to day to be free? Like, am I free enough to put on this outfit that I feel fat in? Oh, and then it brings up all my shame from, being younger and being told I'm eating too much and I'm a little too round at the hips. Like I've had emotional experiences, embodied healing in like putting on an outfit and getting on a bike and being like, okay, this is what I'm doing today. Another way it makes me practice my freedom is, I think because of who I am, my personality and my work, maybe you resonate with this, is I care a lot so much all the time. Like I cannot even be at a party, at a dinner party, a dance party, a club without noticing the dynamics of like inclusion, exclusion. Who's not here? Who might be having a hard time? Where can I bring in someone? What conversation might need to happen in the bathroom to just make a little space so this person can also be brought
Yeah.
into the fold? I care so much. And at Burning Man, I really like I send love and light, and I choose my own wave that I'm gonna ride.
I see.
I'm such an empath. I'm such an empath. I'll sometimes start feeling scared. I'm like, why am I feeling scared? And I look over and my neighbor's scared. I'm like, okay, it's coming from you. Now I'm
Mhm.
rageful and it's coming from that part of the room. So at Burning Man, there's 70,000 vibrations happening. And it's really a place where I practice like what's mine right now and what wave am I riding? And how can I be in connection but also doing my own thing and also centered in a way, which is actually quite hard for me to not be pulled by everyone's energies, even as I do this work. Like at the end of every facilitation day, I have to like work out and I need water and I need so much release of emotions that I've taken on. So I really practice riding my own wave. And I love, we were talking about earlier, there's just enough form and just enough structure to make so much freedom possible.
Yeah.
People think it's chaos out there. It really isn't.
Right.
There are 10 tenets, 11 tenets that you have to follow. And then within that, everything's possible. And
Yeah.
I've experienced portals opening. I've experienced magic. I've experienced the most amazing dance parties at sunrise and otherworldly things happening. And I really think it's because we're doing just enough things to care for the group environment and to care for every individual within it that we can be free and creative and
That's
outrageous
beautiful.
within it. And I love that so much. And when I saw you at the burn last year, and I know a lot of people are having a hard burn, my intention coming in was to have fun.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I set that intention. I was like, I could go to this workshop, which feels like the rest of my life, and I'm sure there'll be some learning and some healing there. Or I could go to this literal hot dog party. And I chose the hot dog party. I did that over and over again. And I just went for pure fun, just like
Yeah.
pure fun. And it feeds me and it fills me. And, the first few months of life and work after the burn are my very best because my cup is overflowing and I have love and joy and possibility and sun in my skin. And the fun is so important.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of like, and for folks who know, there's a temple. You can go cry and release and shed, and there are workshops happening, and you can go learn X, Y, Z. And I think all of that together creates an environment that is truly unparalleled. And I love those conditions. I love who I am there. I love how I struggled there. I love the questions that I ask. I love the things that I don't do that I normally would do. And yeah, I'm so grateful for that
Thank
space.
you.
I'll miss you this year, and I'll send you
Yeah,
some dust magic for your wedding.
yeah, yeah. It's hard. It's definitely a hard thing,
Mm.
but it's in my life. It's definitely in my life, and I expect to go back as soon as I can.
Hmm.
Thank you for speaking of it, and for
Thank you for asking.
yes,
I feel
yes.
so much joy with that question.
Mm. I'm looking at our time. We're coming to a
Hmm.
close. If you have a couple of minutes, I would like to ask you a question that I always ask here at the end, um, which is in this post Me Too moment where
Mm.
the worst of patriarchy has been exposed, because it's not new, it's always been happening, but we're talking about it, you
Hmm.
know? When before powerful and wise woman, I ask,
Hmm.
what should men do? What advice do you have for us to get ourselves together, to show up like we need to show up in the world, to cause less harm and bring more goodness?
Ah, thank you for the work you do that brings that question to your podcast. Um, there's a part of me, there's like a feisty part of me that wants to say, get your shit together.
True.
There's like a bantering part of me that wants to say, Google it. You know, there's a practical side of me that wants to say, go to Gibran's Better Men Project, you know, I don't know, figure it out there. And then
That's fair.
you
All of it is
know,
fair.
there's a part of me that has sat in circle with men or held sort of fishbowl circle for men in the middle and you know, women on the outside. And I know that's not an easy sort of gender delineation, but as we've been raised in the bodies that we were born in. And I think the most healing that I've seen men do, specifically around masculinity and toxic masculinity, has happened in environments that are real, that are authentic, that are courageous, that are embodied, that are loving and committed to love and committed to growth and know that there are no simple answers. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is ask the question or say the thing that we're so afraid of other people knowing about us and sitting with it so that the shame is turned into fuel for something better and sitting with the grief long enough to know that it's actually shared and that it's okay and something else is possible. And I've been so moved in those spaces, and I have brothers, I have siblings from doing gender work, and I want to encourage people to find spaces where you can feel like that. You feel like I can take a mask off and put a load down and make a little eye contact and share something and ask a question and learn. And not from like, and I think the intellectual frameworks are helpful, and I think the books are framework, and I think our thought, you know, are helpful, and I think our frameworks and thought leaders are helpful, and I think there's nothing like sitting face to face and saying, "Tell me your story with manhood, and here's mine, and I want to cry with this, or I want to celebrate this, or I want to build this." Yeah, and I know that more and more men's circles are happening, and more men's work is happening, and I'm so grateful for that. And I want to say to those of us who are not in those circles, because maybe we're in other gender circles, and to my women, you know, and to my sisters, is there's a sacredness here that is has always been here for us, and that I see women stepping into our full power. And I
Mhm.
love that I see more and more women call themselves goddesses and
Yes,
witches. And, you know, the word cauldron is now thrown around everywhere. And yes,
it's a
like let's
miracle.
step into the sensuality of it, the miracle of it, and the
Yes,
archetypes
yeah.
and the like very real stuff that is also structural. So yeah, find your people, I would say. And if you can't find them, like, you know, send a note to those who might know. Sometimes it's
Mm,
just one step removed.
Ashe. Beautiful, generous. Thank you,
Mm,
thank you, thank you, thank you.
thank you.
Um, do you have a couple more minutes?
I
Is that
do.
okay?
I do. I do.
Okay, okay. Just there's another question I asked at the end. It
Mm.
invites a little time travel. So the invitation is if you're willing to leap 20 years ahead and to see yourself. And I don't want you to describe, I'm not asking you to describe yourself to me 20 years from now, but just to see yourself having accomplished some things and not accomplished others, both in the world of work and in the work on yourself, coming closer to who you want to be. And listen to her and see what is she saying to you now? What do you need to learn from her right now? And yeah, then the question to be spoken is tell us what is
Mm.
the advice from your elder self to you now?
This is so wild that you're asking this question. Um, wow, I literally was in a little journey, a little solo journey a few weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
a ceremonious journey, and I did exactly this. I like time traveled first to my 15-year-old self, then to my 25-year-old self, and then to my future self.
Hmm.
And the common thread of those, so my current self went back to the past versions and just held myself. I just held my younger self and I said, thank you for walking the path. Thank you for
Mm-hmm.
staying true to us. It's going to turn out so well. You have no idea what's coming. These dreams you have, these fears you have, these longings, these questions, these everything you're working through. Like, thank you so much for working through it and staying on the path. Like, you'll see it's going to get good. And I went back, and my friend Celeste always says, we thread our lives. And with the healing and the consciousness that we have today, we pick up that thread and we take it back to that moment of pain where that was needed, that
Yeah.
awareness was needed. And we thread it and we bring it forward, and that's how we heal. So I went back and I threaded myself in those eras. And then I came to present day, 33. I just turned 34. And I paused, and then my future self came. And I couldn't see her, but I could feel her. And all she said was, thank you for walking the path. And she
Ashe.
gave me nothing else.
Uh-huh.
She was like, thank you for walking the path. She was like, I
Mm.
cannot tell you, I cannot give you information. I thank you for walking the path and staying true to yourself. There's so many reasons, so many legit reasons, so many attractive reasons that I could go off my path. And we all could go off our path. The
Yes.
shininess left and right. And she just said, thank you. Keep doing it. And so I don't even dare imagine, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even dare, because had I imagined 20 years ago today, I would not have dreamed big enough. I was not free enough
Right.
to be bold enough to imagine the beautiful, miraculous things that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I bow to the mystery, and I'm going to keep my path is to build the muscle to show up for what's unknown and to show up for the moments as they unfold. And that's what she said. So I don't know. Let's talk in 20 years.
Yes. Well, I think she said enough. I think she said enough. Oh, Mama Shimaya,
uh,
thank you. Thank you for your presence and your
mm,
company and your path and your friendship and your
mm,
vocation and your love. What a blessing to know you.
shukran, shukran. Back
Yeah.
to you. Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Thank you to you.
Many, many blessings. Signal versus noise. There's so much competing for our attention. And I am so glad that you stayed with us through the end of the podcast. It should mean that you're finding something meaningful here. Hopefully, something worth sharing. And so I'm asking again that you think of somebody who would be touched by this conversation, who wants to be a part of it some way. It is a decentralized conversation. It is a way in which we're changing ourselves by leaning in towards each other in places like this and in the exchange of these ideas. So, who's a person or two that will be specially moved by what you've heard here today? Send them a text, an email. Let them know we're here. We're not trying to reach everybody, but we want to reach the right people. We want to keep having this decentralized conversation. We want to keep working on getting right to the edge of the evolution of consciousness and culture to see what we find here together. Thank you again for being a part of this. Liking the podcast helps. Subscribing is definitely a good thing. Feedback is always welcomed. Stay in touch.